Welcome to the Battery Podcast from Siemens Digital Industries. We are here again to talk with industry experts in the battery world to bring you an update on what is happening globally and how companies are making a future for their businesses. Today's guest is Taavi Madiberk, the CEO and co-founder of Skeleton Technologies, with our host, Marc Deyda. Take it away, Marc.
Hey, Taavi. Happy to have you here in Nuremberg. We today do a podcast for our listener of the battery business. And I don't know, do you remember what we have together, what nobody else knows?
Actually, I do remember.
What is it?
So we have both had our good firm handshake with President Macron.
Yeah, definitely. It was a couple of years ago, but I think, what was the reason for you to have that handshake with Monsieur Macron?
So we are constantly looking at further expansion in terms of building new factories, expanding our market, and I will be again visiting President Macron this year in May.
It was a wonderful recording, right? So in general, when France and Germany, if you compare these both countries, so usually in Germany there are a lot of talks ongoing not to build up plants in Germany. What is the reason for that, and why did you choose to build up a plant in Germany?
Yes, good question. You know, we started 15 years ago in Estonia, in Eastern Europe, and people ask me that, Taavi, have you gone mad that you are coming from Eastern Europe and going to manufacturing in Germany? But there's good reasons behind it. If we look at supercapacitors, then from the manufacturing cost, the labor cost is actually only 5 to 6%, meaning that whether you manufacture the supercapacitors in Vietnam, in France or Germany, it does not matter that much. What matters is actually the quality of the product, the scale and automation. Secondly, in terms of Germany, we looked at the ecosystem. And in terms of ecosystem, one part is having key customers in Germany, but also we have wide cooperations with local Fraunhofers. And then, of course, one thing what ties up the ecosystem is companies like Siemens, who can not be only customers and development partners, but who can provide very practical support in scaling up the manufacturing and the overall business.
You mentioned, fortunately, Siemens, so thank you for that. But how would you describe the collaboration experience so far? So considering the dynamic between a fast-paced startup, such you are, Skeleton, and a slower-paced industry giant like Siemens?
Yes. I would firstly look at the big picture, and if we look at the example of Elon Musk and Tesla, when many people think that, okay, Tesla was here exception and build a real hardware business by doing it themselves. But even Tesla had early on partners like Daimler and Toyota in order to make it happen. And if you look at the partnership with Siemens, then I think the key part is that the Siemens who we know, they are working on the weekends. They pick up the calls whenever is needed. And if you put these two things combined, a startup and a large industrial, then what are the benefits? Firstly, Siemens in many business units with the rail, with port cranes, with grid stability is already our customer. So that's one big benefit. Second topic for us is that Siemens can really bring in the network and expertise, how to build up the business and have the necessary links with the customers. But thirdly, in terms of, let's be honest, the hardware business, what's the key about hardware? Hardware is hard. Scaling up hardware, and in order to be competitive with China, US and other regions, you need to have the quality, you need to have the automation level, and you need to make sure that your costs are on par. And here is where we really see the value from Siemens side. So it's one part of the ecosystem, and I think that unlike the internet, in clean tech, we will not see a single winner. Or like if you look at search engines, when there are not so many search engines, we have Google. But in clean tech, key is cooperating with different partners, because I would say that the market opportunity for clean tech, it is the biggest business opportunity since the internet. And Europe can only win by working together.
Yeah, thank you Taavi. So in terms of technology, battery technology, so could you elaborate on how Skeleton focus on high power applications and stability, combined with the use of graphene material, sets you apart in the battery industry, especially in comparison to traditional kilowatt hours focus modules?
Yes. So, you know, back in 2009, when we started from a 40 square meter lab, when we understood early on that we don't have a lot of money or resources, and if we want to be successful in the market, we really need to differentiate. So the question is, how do we do it? First topic is that with supercapacitors, this is a product where the devices can be charged only in a matter of seconds, and you have 1 million charge-discharge cycles in total, so you have a very long lifetime. And if you look at also the raw materials aspect, then we don't need any lithium, cobalt or manganese that we can have a fully European value chain. But now for practical use cases, we always say that we are in the megawatt second business, not in the kilowatt hour business. So we are the last line of defense when it comes to grid stability and virtual inertia. In terms of electric vehicles, we are not well suited to be the main battery, but we are the key in terms of ensuring the reliability of electric vehicles on the low voltage side. And if you think about all hard to decarbonize sectors, mining trucks, port cranes, heavy industry, then what do these industries require? They don't require tens of hours of driving. They require high power, extreme reliability, and a low total cost of ownership. And this is really where Skeleton comes into play. And if we compare with competition, we also understood that if you want to be competitive against players from Asia, what is the key? The key is that you have to have a differentiator on the materials level. And that's why we developed our own curved graphene material, what we are currently scaling up in Bitterfeld-Wolfen. And the question is not only in terms of performance and having more energy, but the real question is lowering the cost for the customer. Because if you really want to fight climate change, then the key is not having great technology. The key is lowering the cost for the customers who save the CO2 emissions.
Well, that's interesting. You mentioned a lot times competitive. So in terms of competitive, you choose a lot of machine builders from Asia. What makes them more different from others like Western ones? And what is your expectation clearly to the machine builders?
Yes.
To supply your battery production plant?
Yeah, we have actually a mix of Asian and European companies. And of course, the market is global, meaning that in each step of the manufacturing process, we need to have equipment which is competitive. And let's be clear that Asia is 5 to 10 years ahead in Europe in the battery market. But the only way we can catch up is really to focus on the automation, focus on self-learning algorithms and AI, and to lean on the experience of large corporates. But the point of if I look at the Skeleton success as well, then a key part is to do the scale up right. And for that, the cooperation with Siemens is actually one of the critical issues because, of course, as a growing company, we cannot have all the competences internally. But if we partner with others who have already done it, then we can be competitive on the global scale. And from the machine builders in Europe, I would say that scale here is the key. But the industry needs to go together in a way that we can compete with both US and Asia.
That's quite interesting. So let's have a deeper look in the technology approach. So you mentioned already AI, but for example, how IoT and virtual commissioning technologies have been already applied in your plant.
Yeah.
So and what was the biggest effort or benefit out of this?
Yes. So firstly, I would stop on the AI topic, that it's a nice fancy keyword, but we need to look at what is actually behind it. And the key in terms of learning from the process and noticing the correlations which maybe the human eye cannot notice is reducing the bill of materials and having better quality. And here we see already in the cooperation what we have done is that for our electrode manufacturing, we have had practical impacts on both the yield and output by utilizing this. In terms of IoT and virtual commissioning, let's say there's one truth about every battery gigafactory, which maybe is not usually told in regular podcast, but the truth is that it hits the fan every time around in terms of battery scale-up. And now the topic is that if you know that this is already happening, what do you do about it? And virtual commissioning is a very practical thing in terms of looking at all of the risks and all of the topics that can hit the fan and solving them up in advance. Because if you do it later on, when the pain is immense, and that pain, of course, comes at a direct cost. And if you talk about IoT, then the key topic is, again, it's a keyword, but what is the practicality of that? To have proper manufacturing flow, to reduce the cost, to be more efficient about it. Because, again, I think here in Europe, we really need to think about not creating a European battery industry only. Because let's be honest, we will not be competitive if we say that we also make batteries in Germany, or we also make supercapacitors in France. That's not enough. We need to have a differentiator. And that's why virtual commissioning, IoT, and the entire approach to the IT infrastructure is critical. And that will not be achieved by a single company in-house. That actually requires proper cooperation with the companies who have the domain expertise. And this is what we have done in Skeleton.
So it was quite funny that you mentioned make right? So let's take the opposite. So you always use the word super capacitor, super working mode with Siemens, thanks to that. And now you announce the super battery manufacturing. What will change with this future product? Are you going to be now also battery manufacturer?
Yeah. So in terms of Skeleton, our strategy is to satisfy the high power requirements with the lowest cost and lowest CO2 emissions. So the super battery in essence is a combination of the high power of the supercapacitors and high energy of lithium-ion batteries. So if you look at supercapacitors, we are very well suited for applications where the burst of energy or peak power or charging time is less than 1 minute. With the super battery, we are targeting applications which go up to 45 minutes. And what is now the benefit for the customer? You have 50,000 cycles, meaning that if you look at regular batteries, you would have maybe 3,000 to 5,000 charge-discharge cycles. And why this is important? Because in the end of the day, to fight climate change, we need to have a lower total cost of ownership. Furthermore, with the super battery, we can really address these hard to decarbonize sectors. But when it comes to utility vehicles, when it comes to mining, today the technical solutions are not yet there to go to zero emissions. And this is what the super battery does. So in Skeleton, we always say that we go after the CO2 emissions, which otherwise would not be saved. And that's why we brought the super battery into action.
So that's in direction of sustainability already, right? So what do you expect from a supplier, from Siemens, to be sustainable? So what is your clear expectation? What do we have to supply or have to develop still solutions for?
Yeah. In terms of sustainability, I would address here two aspects. That first topic, of course, relates to the manufacturing footprint. But if you look at the general battery industry, then we need to have an honest discussion about how much CO2 emissions are created in the manufacturing process. And this goes to not only the battery raw materials, but this actually goes to the component machine suppliers as well, because otherwise we don't achieve our overall climate objectives. I think the second part of sustainability, which in Europe is under-addressed, is that the players in the battery value chain need to be in Europe sustainable themselves. So we have a very close eye actually in terms of scale up on the profitability of the business. And this is, I would say this way, that if European battery companies do not differentiate and they are not profitable long term when the fight against climate change will not be won. And I think that from the policy perspective, for European policymakers, we need to have a close and hard look at what is the competitive landscape, especially against the US and China, and is the ecosystem actually fully supporting that. So in sustainability, let's talk about two topics, that the classics in terms of what does the value chain look like. But the second part is that the companies need to be sustainable themselves. And in terms of value chains, we cannot rely on cobalt, which we know 60% of the cobalt comes from Democratic Republic of Congo, which might not be as democratic as the name first suggests. We need to really work on having the European battery raw material value chain.
So it's a whole life cycle of the battery. So that means battery passport in that direction. Is this what you...
Exactly, but we need to look at the whole life cycle. Mm-hmm. We need to look at also in terms of what it means for the European economy. Because let's be clear that if you look at top 20 technology companies, when we have maybe one or two European players, and the battery industry is actually the natural domain where Europe should be strong. But this market today is dominated by Asian players. And I think it's not only a question in terms of climate change, which is of course a critical topic, but we need to look at the bigger picture that industries being built in Europe would have long-term value, because otherwise Europe faces a topic that we might be the best technology museum in 20 years' time if we don't take the action now.
Okay, beside to the sustainability, IoT, virtual commissioning technologies, so what other key takeaways about what Siemens is offering for startups and growth companies are you in your mind? So what is Siemens additionally serving and supplying?
Yes. So I think that we can separate into three main buckets. But firstly, if we look at climate change and climate technologies, when Siemens is very well positioned, starting from grid stability to rail, to mining equipment, to marine, and with the cooperation as a customer. And that, of course, is always key for companies going to scale up to have these off-take customers. Second part is all of the support when it comes to scale up. But there's the hardware part that if you look at the modern battery factory, when let's be honest, this is most cases running on Siemens PLCs. But
which is good, or
which is good because we need more standardization. Yeah. In the battery industry, we do need more standardization. But the topic there is that with practical support in terms of scale up, that if you look at our Leipzig plant build out, when we started with Siemens early on in terms of having the proper factory layout, having the logistics concept, getting the experts on board in order to have the proper requirements in place with the suppliers. But there's the third element as well, that, and this is an ecosystem element.
So you see us as an interface between these end customers and machine builders, right?
Indeed, that nowadays it's such that if you don't have the right software, you can't have a proper hardware product. And this is the same logic with machine builders. But if you look at machines as just standalone pieces of equipment, then you will never get to efficiency. You need to have something which ties it up. So Siemens with the IoT, with the PLM solutions and so on, is one of the keys to have an efficiently running gigafactory. Because otherwise you basically have all the pieces of the puzzle, but you do not have the full picture which would work efficiently. But I would add the third topic here as well, that Siemens is also for Skeleton an investor. So Siemens Financial Services has invested in Skeleton. And this is again what is the importance of this? The importance of this is the following, that this shows that the partner has the faith as a customer, as a scale-up partner. And this always allows to bring in additional investments, additional high-quality investors to make sure that shareholder interests are aligned for the long term and for building a company which is really scalable, not only in Europe, but really on the global market.
So that means since a couple of years, we work already closely together. So we start executing the projects. So there are a lot of projects which you announced already. So what is your long-term plan for join the endeavor with Siemens? So is there something what you have in your mind? And can you give us a view in the future?
Yes. So we are just in the process of finalizing the first factory in Leipzig. But if you look at the customer demand, then it's clear that we need to significantly expand our manufacturing footprint. And that's why we started with the handshake with President Macron, but also meeting many other countries that we are seriously looking into further expansion steps, because it's clear that if you want to have an impact, then that can only be done at scale. And if I look at Siemens, then Siemens has the capability to scale together with us. And that is highly important. And if you talk about the long-term cooperation, then if you look at European competitive advantage, then what is Europe strong at? Europe is strong at in terms of different type of high-power grid technologies. We have ABB, we have Siemens, we have other players. Heavy-duty equipment when it comes to machinery, whether it's mining equipment, whether it's other type of construction equipment. And I think the next wave of growth in the European battery industry will come from the industrial front, because these are really the hard to decarbonize sectors. But yes, we need to have our passenger vehicle battery industry, but we need to really look at how we differentiate. And where bringing the capabilities of Siemens and Skeleton together can really make an impact with a specific competitive advantage.
So great, Taavi. So as really always, it's inspiring me and hopefully also the listener talking to you, right? So many insights you gave to us, and I'm really happy with this podcast, hopefully the listener as well. I wish you good luck in all your upcoming activities. So we supply and support you as much as we can. And thanks for having you here, being my guest in the podcast. And right now, back to Nick.
Thank you so much, Marc and Taavi. That gives me a lot to think about for the world of battery in Europe, and I hope the same can be said for the audience. If you're still looking to learn more about the battery industry, maybe check out some of our previous episodes. Or if you want to find something more, our website, siemens.com/battery, is a great resource on your digitalization journey. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. This podcast contains the personal views and opinions of the speakers. It is important to note that these opinions are solely those of the speakers and do not reflect the views or positions of Siemens, its management, its employees, or any entities the speakers may be affiliated with. Siemens as a company does not endorse any of these statements made in the podcast. Siemens bears no responsibility for ensuring the content's accuracy or verifying the statements made in this podcast.